As a writer, you always hope to become well-known. You always hope to make a living at it. You always hope to have, to be the Danielle Steele or the Nora Roberts. But it's so rare. I never expected this. I never expected to have a book that I wrote about my brother to be something that that people want as much as they do, and that it would also expose me for who I am in the general public. So ballet was my life. I was going to be a ballet dancer, absolutely. I started dancing very young, joined the California Ballet School at 13, I believe, and really fell in love with ballet, and that was my life. And my dad was 100% behind me, and he volunteered a lot at the company. And I even went to New Hampshire to audition. I was 19. I went to New Hampshire to audition for the New Haven Ballet Company, and ended up realizing that the love of my life was back home in California, and I didn't really want to move to New Hampshire. When you're in love with an actor and you marry an actor, LA or New York are the two places you have to be. So we were closer to LA, so we moved to LA just before we got married. I ended up trying to go into musical theater, and that kind of worked. Did background work on soap operas and in television, and was on Square Pegs as a background person for a while. And then I kind of figured I had to get a real job. I took another job with a .com, and I was there for 3 years, and it was not the best fit. I actually got laid off. Gave me the opportunity to say to my husband, hey, could you take the corporate job for a while so I can stay home and learn how to write? And I had been writing. I was writing a romance at that time, but I didn't really take it seriously enough because I didn't think I had the time. Because when you have a day job and you have little kids, the time is hard to find. But it wasn't really until 2007, after my mother died, that I got very serious about writing. Up to that point, I think I'd written 6 or 7 books and sent them out and tried to get them to sell, but I only wrote them, I didn't edit them. So that was an issue. And then my mother died, and I realized I needed to get serious, because now my mother's gone. She's never going to hold one of my books in her hands. So I needed to get serious. And so I did. I had no plans to write about Scott. It was not on my radar at all. And it turned out I went to a pagan conference in Florida in 2018, in October of 2018. And while I was there, I gave a talk about Scott. And afterwards, people came up to me and said, thank you so much for sharing the person behind the books. We don't know enough about him. You are going to write a book about him, right? And I was like, no, that's not in my plans. But by the time the weekend was over, I had had at least 50 people say, you are going to write a book about your brother, right? And 2018 was a very tumultuous year for me. It was the year after my father died. It was, I had a hard time writing fiction that year for various and sundry reasons. So at the end of that year, I turned to nonfiction, and I turned to trying to get my ideas, my feelings out about Scott down as an antidote to all the bad that had happened that year. I would go to the computer and sit down and write whatever came to my mind, whether it was about Scott's wallet or about our cabin in the woods or about a vacation. I would just sit down, title the top of the page, and just write until whatever I had to say about that particular topic was done. And once it was done, I pushed back from my desk and walked away and didn't go back to it for another month or 2 or possibly 3. It took me 4 years to write the book. And I never would have if I hadn't gone to that conference at that right time and gotten the encouragement from those people. In order to understand Scott, you had to understand the family he grew up in. I mean, because that is the foundation. No matter who you are, your family life is the foundation of your life. It informs the person that you are. Now, yes, you can change that if it was a particularly bad family life. That can absolutely be changed. But in Scott's case, who he was came directly out of our family life. He would have been a different person with a different family. Now, he probably would have gone the same paths, but my parents, being who they were, allowed him to be who he was. So I could not leave them out at all. Grandma Hazel, she was amazing. She was a writer as well as everything else she did. She was a sewer. She made, she sewed quilts, she sewed clothes, she sewed all my Barbie dolls' clothes. She sewed stuffed animals and made these creatures, these dolls with long, skinny legs and big fat gonks that when we were little kids, we used to hug to go to sleep at night. And I always thought she had a bit of a folk witch in her. The cabin was in our lives from 1966 to 1976. My dad bought the cabin, but we leased the land because it was government land. And so we had a 99-year lease that went with the sale of the cabin. As a family, we had the entire mountain and the valley behind it to roam around. Scott would pick tons of flowers to bring back to my mom because she couldn't walk very far. She had multiple sclerosis, so she was pretty much cabin bound. It was tall pine trees. It was nothing but stars at night. It was thunderstorms in summer. It was blue jays and squirrels, and it was magic. I do believe it's one of the places that Scott really fell in love with nature. If Scott was here today, I think he would be thrilled with the growth of the community. I think he would be thrilled with the amount of queer and non-cis presenting people joining in and sharing and getting their books published. I think he would be kind of disappointed that the witch wars are still going on in one form or another. He would still be studying traditions. He would still be learning, and I think he would have just, I don't know, done a lot of amazing things. It's very sad that he died at 36 and couldn't fulfill a lot of these other ambitions that he had. I talk to him all the time. It started when I was writing the book, and I think in the preface I have, because there's a part where I'm like, oh my God, people are gonna read this and they're gonna see all my failures, my faults, and they're gonna see all my regrets. And like, I'm not sure I wanna do this. And I just heard him go, just get on with it. So ever since then, I've been hearing him, and we talk and we argue. And for a while I kept thinking, oh, this is all in my head, this is all in my head. And then I thought, no, that's a snarky Scott response. That is not me, that is Scott. So definitely we are closer now than we were. If I could go back, I would want to meet his friends, his witchy friends. I would love to have met Donald Michael Craig. He was Scott's roommate for 6 years. I never got to meet Donald. The pagan community, they had a celebration of life for him 3 days after he passed away at DeTracy Regula's house. My parents went, but if I had known DeTracy at the time, I would have gotten an invitation as well, and I could have gone. So in that respect, I really wish I had made an effort to meet his friends and to ask to meet his friends. I am working on a new paranormal romance, well, slow burn romance series. In talks with the publisher. I don't have a contract, but I've started it and I'm really happy with it. And so I'm excited about that. I get to go to the UK Tarot Conference this year. I just decided to go because London, and I'm not getting any younger, and I figured it's a good vacation for me and the husband. So, but while I'm there, I get to do a book signing both at the conference and at the Atlantis Bookshop. And so I'm just thrilled. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to that. And then I'm going back to Florida in November for, this is the Trees of Avalon Gathering, for the conference there. And I'm going to be speaking on 2 new subjects that I haven't talked about before. So I'm a little bit nervous about that. If you take anything away from the book that I wrote, I hope it's that Scott led with kindness and he accorded everyone dignity and respect. And I think if everybody could do that, we'd be living in a better world.